I have fallen into this trap of thinking like technology will save our schools. And actually, any technology that doesn't make more room for human moments, like, I don't want it anymore. Like, tech is just a vehicle, right? And if we convince ourselves that it's the whole shebang, then we've lost.
I am absolutely honored and privileged to have Mike Yates with us. Mike is a hero of mine, a speaker of blunt truths, and is a senior product manager at the Reinvention Lab at Teach for America, which we'll get into later. Mike, before even introducing yourself, what is your philosophy of education?
It's that education and learning should happen in the real world. And I think that's as simple as I can put it, is as much as we can, the things that we do in learning in school and the things that we do to educate anyone should have real stakes, like real implications, involve real people, because I just feel like it's better that way.
I mean, I think that's why we connect at that level. Like, to me, that's the ethos of education.
Yeah.
Not only can we make learning relevant, but how do we allow learners to engage, not 10 years later, but like now, so that their learning is totally purposeful.
That's right.
So give me kind of the story of what led you to the Reinvention Lab and the work that you find most joyous that's in front of you right now.
Man, yeah. So that story is, I think it's kind of like the story of my career, is just me searching. Like, I went to school because that's what everyone said I should do, right? Like, my mom was a teacher, and we grew up in bad neighborhoods in Houston, right? And she told me when I was 15, she was like, "Hey, you should never be a teacher ever. Like, don't do this." And I fell into teaching anyway. And when I did, I was really dissatisfied with every system, the existing options. I was really dissatisfied with public school, private school, charter school. I bounced around, never taught the same thing twice, never taught in the same school building for more than 2 years. And eventually went off and tried to build my own school. And then I ended up falling into a project called Alpha with a group of incredible people who I would any day drop everything that I was doing and go work with them again. That model of school was, we basically replaced direct instruction with adaptive learning software. But what it really was it was a playground to dream, right? Like, I never heard the words no.
Totally.
At one point, our main funder came in and said, if there's a cheaper way to do it, don't do it that way. Like, go all out to figure out how we can bring this thing called learning into the real world. And that made me, like, it helped me pick my head up and sort of look around and see what was happening in the world of business, tech, in education. And so I decided to go play with the largest organization that I could find at the time afterwards. And that was either going to be Google or Teach for America. And at the same time where I was making that decision, I was building a startup on the side, and I met this wonderful person named Sunana, who literally in a call very much like this one, she was just like, "Yo, what are you doing next year?" And I said, "Hey, I'm always a free agent," like, always. And a couple months later, learning about what the Reinvention Lab was, what the goal and purpose of it was, I turned my sights to go join up with the lab for, the foreseeable future.
Right. I think you were the highlight of South by Southwest for me, because I'm a big believer in human connection in all things learning, between teacher and student, learner and learner. And just we had opportunities, whether it was during the day or late at night, to have meaningful, powerful conversations. And my thesis is that we do not do that in schools. We do not center human connection. We do not center being seen and belonging. Can you speak to that, like, in your own work and kind of what you've seen and what you're trying to do?
I mean, I was literally just on a call this morning, and I was saying, like, that you were also the highlight of my South by Southwest. Like, from just like grabbing you to put you in a random video and you not asking any questions, just be like, yeah, I got you. Like, right. Like real, genuine human connection.
Authenticity.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've always been obsessed with like finding your people online. And my people would always ask me this question, like, are those real, like, are those real connections? And I'm like, well, you'll see when you meet them in person, like that's when you'll know. And, so yeah, also a real highlight for me. So I do think real authentic human connections missing in education. And I think it's because the laundry list of problems is so long. And I also just, quite frankly, I think that I think there are a growing number of educators that are actually not interested in that with students or even other teachers. And I say this because I was once that person. Like I was always interested in an authentic connection with my students, but I was never interested in, and I mean this in like a really arrogant way. Like I was not interested in connection with my fellow staff members, which I regret. I remember as a second year teacher, I was teaching in this little 6th grade center in Fort Worth. And amongst the students, I was like the favorite teacher. Like they loved coming in my class. I was also a Black male in the public school system. So I was seen as the disciplinarian. So like students would get sent to my class from other teachers' classes, and then they would not want to leave because they were like, what we're doing here is awesome. Like, this is fun. I love this. But what I never intentionally did is built any strong, deep human relationship with other staff members. And I remember having this conversation with my principal because another teacher said, well, Mike doesn't like me. And I was like, I literally said to her, girl, I don't think about you ever. Like, even when I see you. And now as the person that I am, I'm like, that was one of the worst things that I could have said to another human being. It's like, I don't think about you even. And she taught across the hall from me. So, Sarah, if you see this, I'm sorry. But like, I recognize now that was horrible. So like, I say that I know that there's a growing number of teachers that feel like I don't have time to slow down. I'm not paid for them to like me. Like I'm putting everything into my family at home and my kids in my classroom. There's a culture around learning or around school that like doesn't encourage it. And I think that has to change for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. It's this balance between the system that we find ourselves in, which is individualistic in learning, which is lonely, and then trying to challenge that with authenticity, with real relationships. And a lot of what you talk about and write about is systematic change. Mm-hmm. And a lot of what you're working on is rethinking the physical spaces of our classrooms, the relationship between industry and education that doesn't just feel, I don't know, overly capitalistic, right? But feels like something much more regenerative. I'm really interested in unpacking that with you.
Yeah, I think one of the things that my biggest learning from Alpha, which is the school project that I fell into that changed my life and my career, is so we held school. So we had this like school-ish looking building when we started, and then there was talk of and we were based in Austin, Texas, so there was talk of this building called LZR, and I am not from Austin, but I knew what LZR was. And I know that every time you said that to people in a certain part of town, they knew exactly what building you're talking about. LZR used to be a building called La Zona Rosa. And La Zona Rosa used to be a bar and concert venue where people like Prince, Willie Nelson, like Norah Jones, like all of these very famous people have played. And I remember hearing like, we're going to buy that building and we're going to put the high school in there. And I was like, heck yeah, man. Like this was around the same time where I became obsessed with WeWork. Like people can say, look, Adam Newman is probably a maniac. He's definitely a narcissist. And like, but I can't speak to anything else about who Adam Newman is. But what they figured out at WeWork in terms of human beings and physical space is to the hands
100%,
down
100%.
unmatched, right? Yeah. Like, I remember when WeGrow became a thing, I was like, oh, that's got so much potential. And now I'm actually pretty good friends with the person who was chief learning officer of WeGrow. But I like deep dove on WeWork because they figured out how to put humans in one space that were all working on different things and used this like common human gravity towards a common goal that nobody said out loud. Like nobody had it on their t-shirt. But when you walked into a WeWork, I'm also heavily influenced by the fact that my co-founder of my first startup was the global chief evangelist at WeWork. So like when I walked into a WeWork, I almost always saw somebody that I knew. So it was this experience that I was obsessed with. And I kept asking myself, why not school? Like, why not education? Why not learning? And when we moved into that building, it solidified my belief that like, if you can tear down the walls of your classrooms, then everything changes. All of a sudden, you no longer need a teacher to lecture because the form of the room, the function of the room has changed. One of the things that we were noticing, we were just at South by Southwest, is like when we walked in for our session, we did a sneaker design session. And when we walked in for it, there's all these circular tables. We're like, that's great. But then you see there's a stage and there's chairs on the stage as if we were going to come in a session titled workshop and do a panel. And we were like, no. So we started putting boxes and like markers and paints on top of the tables. And the tech was like, what are you guys doing? You don't want to mic
flipping
check?
the script on the entire experience.
Exactly. It's like the form and function of the room, of the physical learning space, it will, like if you change that first, it will, or second, whenever you change it. But if you change that, you change the purpose of that room, and thus you can do
It's so
something
funny.
really special.
It's so funny because we put all these like bullshit buzzwords with that, right? I can be like, well, what you were doing was human-centered design, Mike.
Right.
You were pulling from the writings of blah, blah, blah. But that's just common sense.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like at our core, if you're up on stage, you're in a different power dynamic than the people below.
Right.
So what you're doing is you're kind of communing in that space with them.
Mm-hmm. And you know, in the session, Sunana, who is like, I said this in that session, but like, get you somebody to work with like Sunana, like
total badass.
Yeah, like complete. I come to her with crazy ideas all the time, and she'll say to me, Mike, I don't see what you see, but I see the smile on your face, so that's the direction that we're moving, right? Like that's the
I love that.
Her immediate instinct, she looks at me and she's like, I'm putting these people in a circle. So there's 120 people in the room, and she gets everyone in a circle. And to me, that was like the ultimate. And this is like right after the South by Southwest people are like, what are you doing with our panel setup? She like even further was like, screw it, like put them in a circle, because like it and you're so right, Aaron, like that's it's a human instinct. It's not human-centered design. Like humans have been telling stories and relating to each other around, like sitting in circles, standing in circles for all of mankind. Like all of mankind. So totally with that.
No, I think that there's this douchey disruption narrative in education and edtech, right? And so much of what we're trying to do at Unrulr, and I think one of the reasons why you see value in the tool is that we're not trying to disrupt. We're trying to bring education back to these human-centered relationships, and we're trying to give power back to learners like they had in the past, right? Like my grandfather, who was a tool and die manufacturer, had to hone his craft, to create apprenticeships, to be just really damn active in his learning, right? And something about modern education has destroyed that, has destroyed and created a passive learning environment with rows of chairs. And I think a lot, I don't know if you're a big of a fan as the Voodoo album by D'Angelo as I am. I think it's like top 5 greatest album of all time. And there needs to be a documentary. Questlove, please make a documentary on Voodoo. And I'm enamored by this idea of Soulquarians. These musicians, Erykah Badu, Jay Dilla, James Poyser, and so many more, Questlove, D'Angelo, and they came together, totally different technical skill sets. And they made beautiful art products. You know, they shipped them out to the world, and they documented that experience in really meaningful ways, right? And there's almost this spirituality, this fervor, and we have douchey terms for it, like flow state, right? But this is just us kind of outside of our bodies in this almost like kind of spiritual plane, you know, working on a shared vision with people.
Yeah.
And that does not happen enough in the world of education.
Yeah. It's like, I used to say this thing to people all the time is it's like, we've become convinced that we can outsmart our DNA. And what I meant by that is exactly like the examples that you gave, especially like your grandfather, I love hip hop and hip hop culture and Black culture has very much so been like your uncle on the stoop telling you don't talk to that girl. Like your grandmother teaching you how to play dominoes for the first time. Like I learned how to do math because my grandmother, like this very small woman from New Orleans, Louisiana, is better than everyone in the whole world at dominoes. And she talks the most polite trash ever. But when I was a kid, she said to me, literally, I lost and I was crying. And she comes around the corner and I had no idea that she could play dominoes like this. And she said, come on, you're not going to lose no more. And I was like, what? You're not going to lose no more. And then she literally taught me how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide by playing this game as a 6-year-old kid. And so, like, if we did something like that today at a conference at Deeper Learning or AS, everybody's, oh, that's so innovative. Look at the human-centered design. But it's like, no, like this came from the block. Like this came, you know, like Badu is a great example. Shout out to Dallas, Texas. I've actually been in the same, so Erykah Badu, by the way, if y'all don't know, if you are a fan of Badu, which Aaron, this is why, like, I'm so glad we know each other because, like, every time we talk,
and if you're not a fan of Badu, please don't ever listen to this podcast.
That's right. Unsubscribe.
Go
like,
totally.
So Badu lives she lives in Dallas. So you know there are celebrities that live in the
Roy
city.
Hargrove, man.
That's right.
Rest in peace, Roy Hargrove.
Badu lives here, and she's like out and about. So I have seen her at North Park Mall on like lots of occasions, and also my wife's uncle is her hairdresser. Yeah. Derek Pegram, he's amazing. But the first time I saw her, I was taken back that like nobody else was like, oh my gosh, Erykah Badu's in the mall. And then my friend was just like, Erykah. So she comes over and is talking to us for, 20, 30 minutes. And I was like, hey, why did you come over? And she said, because you called my name. And I was like, oh. She was like, nothing more, nothing less. Like, you a human, I'm a human. You called my name. Now we're here vibing. And I was like, yo, that like actually like the simplicity of that, like there are multitudes of lessons for learning, life, anything like that, right? Like she chose in that space. So like that, you reminded me of that story because you mentioned her name, but but like we can get back on topic now. But I love Badu. I can rant about her for days.
This is just a Badu-centered podcast. It's
Nowadays,
Badu-centered pedagogy.
That's right. Hey, that could be a thing.
I mean, I think a lot about the power of team building and human connection. So like Jack was the first student I ever taught. And when I was the webmaster for HPA, my first job in education, Jack knew how to fly this $4,500 DJI Inspire drone.
Oh wow!
And had all like the crunchy cuts, that the cool teenagers have, right? Like could put like the great, like Mad Lib beat, on like a drone video and make it look amazing. And then Jack became the videographer for Nalukai, that youth entrepreneurship program that I helped to run 7 years strong. And Jack had this incredible ability of capturing the human connection between teams as they grapple with things.
Wow.
And I came to realize, we're doing cool stuff, right? Like I'm like very like things that would pad my ego as someone who was slowly becoming an entrepreneur. Like we're teaching lean startup methodology and agile project management, and we're having real powerful demos of products and they're solving problems in their community. But what I realized was the most important technical skill they were gaining was human connection and relationships. Relationships as a technical skill, right? Human capital, but the ability to kind of grapple with teams. And again, I mean, I really struggle to see that in the halls of privilege, even in the dopest, project-based learning, deeper learning spaces. There's not enough youth working with youth of different
Right.
technical skills, of different socioeconomic status. Can you speak to like that in your world as well?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I feel really fortunate. It's breaking my heart to see it. I was just watching this morning an interview with the mayor of Houston because Houston ISD is being taken over by the state education agency. And I was like, man, that sucks, because I feel like I hated school growing up. I was like, school is whack. Nothing is here for me. And then I landed at this high school that was the most incredible place. And one of the like heroes in education that nobody ever talks about, that nobody knows, is a man named Paul Castro. He is one of my like hero. He was a principal who just believed that young people could do whatever they said they could do. And he was very specific about that. Like, he was like, if you say you are an NBA player, then I believe you. And because I believe you, I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to put you in certain situations to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to push you there. So I was running this candy. I was running like, it was like a candy and sneaker and burnt CD enterprise out of my locker. Like, I had 3 guys working for me. They were being paid a cut of what they sold. We had check-ins, like coded language, all of this. Well, like, Castro finds out that this is happening, and he calls me in his office one day, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to shut down. They're going to suspend me. And he's like laughing, and he's like, hey, I just want you to know, we have cameras all over the school. You guys are not discreet. You would be the worst drug dealers on planet Earth. And he's like laughing at us. But then he was like, I like, my mom was also a public school teacher in the same district, so they knew each other. And he was like, I know your mom's not gonna let you work, so this is now your job. Set up a table. And he was like, you need to manage these employees. If they get in trouble, you in trouble. Right? Like, so he was like, now they are your responsibility as long as they're on in this building. And one of the things that he taught me in that lesson was like, yes, like peers working with peers. There was this heavy emphasis on that. It was also a school that was somewhat of an experiment, where like we had an Outback Steakhouse attached to the school for the culinary program, a sustainable garden where they grew the food that they use inside of the Outback Steakhouse just to do like a lunch service program. And this is a public school, right? So it was a public school that's like right on the edge of the hood. And it's like, the district was like, let's see what happens if we put money into this. And one of the things that he believed is that in any of those specialty programs, the teacher should fade to the back and the young people should fade forward. Right. And so I've held that belief, and I didn't know where it came from until I like met with him again and was like, oh, like this was cultivated in me. So I think it takes at least one educator in a school to say, forget the trends, forget the pedagogy, forget teach like a champion, forget Doug Lemov, right? Like, let's do something that makes logical sense. Let's do something different. So for me, it was like cultivated in me. I deeply believe in it. We struggle with this at Teach for America. Like, even inside the Reinvention Lab, we really struggle with it. But I'm proud to say that we are struggling through it and not leaving it alone.
Oh, I love that.
Are you able to share more about what you do at the Reinvention Lab?
Absolutely. So the Reinvention Lab exists to change the way that Teach for America operates. The organization was built to quite literally inspire Teach for America to do and be differently with respect to the future of learning. Actually, I was just talking to the founder of the lab this morning, and she actually laid out this very beautiful, I was telling her, I was like, we should have recorded that. But she talked about this woman named Michelle Culver. She's been at Teach for America for a very, very long time, for 20 years. And I actually like working with Michelle because we don't agree on a lot of things. And like, we've given each other permission to push really hard. And she allows me to like really push and really be aggressive about it. But what she said was like, hey, 20 years ago, Teach for America was on the cutting edge of teaching and learning. Like, we were doing things that nobody was doing. Everybody was talking about it, but nobody was doing it. And we got really, really high on that supply. Like, TFA was like, yep, like, we're it. Everybody's going to come here. And we got real comfortable for 20 years. And all of a sudden, the world changed. And then it changed again. And then it changed again. And now Teach for America is a literal dinosaur. Like, literal dinosaur. So the lab was built to help Teach for America honestly survive into the future of a world that looks so different than what it did like when they first started. I was brought on to build a community of innovators. People like Aaron, like you guys, right? Like, who are like, we define innovation for ourselves, people who sat at the intersection of equity and innovation. So there were people that were doing things that were quite cool. And we were like, yep, but if you're not concerned with equity, then we're not concerned with you. And then the opposite is also true. There's people that are doing amazing equity work that were not innovating on the current model in any sort of way. So we made really hard choices there. There's a lot of work that fits under the lab's umbrella, but just as an example, how this community would function is that we would meet the needs of our people. One of the things that we did was that everybody loves, I love it as well. We heard, for example, that 48% of them, and at the time it was about 2,000 people, 48% of the people said, we struggle with marketing and branding. We struggle to communicate the value that we're creating. And so rather than create a marketing and branding workshop or seminar or panel, we built a sneaker competition. We partnered with a brand called 99 Products, some of the most amazing people ever. Everybody's seen their work, but nobody knows it. Just put it that way. Like, they're a creative agency called And Them. They've built things like the Yeezy brand. They've got designers that worked at Nike, some of the biggest footwear brands in the world, did stuff with the NFL, NBA, stuff like that. And they chose to say, yes, let's work with this little old like project inside of Teach for America. So we were in a 6 weeks of design sessions, basically teaching these startups, schools, nonprofits, how do you create a marketing campaign? How do you create a brand? How do you communicate that? And then they were challenged to do all of that on a sneaker as a canvas. We ran a little judging window, and then the winning pair, we produced 1,200 pairs of them and distributed them all over the world. It was an incredible experience. We did version 2 of that. So like, that's an example of like how we functioned. What we hoped for that to do, like the theory of change is like, Teach for America would not only see that, but they would participate, and they would literally like choose to communicate their value differently. The greatest sort of story arc there is like when we did version 2 this year, we had Teach for America regional teams. So like Teach for America Houston, Teach for America Jacksonville, they were design teams in the second Future of Learning Challenge. So that's an example of how we try to use creativity and just like, I don't know, like the sheer ability to knock you off your front foot, to try to make change. And today what we look like is more of like, we're designing new products and programs that could be a new line of business for Teach for America, just exploring what's next, right? So it could be a software product. It could be a program. We've got one team working on summer programming. How do you reinvent summer school? And like, we've got another team working on reinventing a jobs board. Like, what is the future of finding a job within innovative education look like? So that's kind of how we function. And
so it's almost like
oh, good.
It's almost like an R&D team.
Yep.
That's constantly engaged and working with the rest of the institution.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's probably the best way to sum up what we are. Is we are the R&D arm of TFA right now.
It's really cool. It sounds like you have a lot of freedom and flexibility to move around. Is that true?
Yeah. Some of it I give to myself. I was one of those 90s kids where they told us you have to be well-rounded. So I came out of college with a lot of skills. I was like, when I came out of college, I was like, I could redesign your business. I could make you a hero video. I could build very light software. Like, I was really good at low code. And then I've also just staked my career on the ability to learn things quickly. Like I am entrepreneurial enough to have an idea and go learn whatever I need to learn to stand it up and be able to hand it to somebody who can operationalize it. So because I'm built that way, I have been moved to every single part of the lab. And I love it that way. Like I love that. And I think we just put the right team in place. Like, so yeah, it's a lot of creative freedom. Sometimes not as much as I want, right? Like I want more creative freedom. I very much so desire these like almost unstructured work environments, but it's as much creative freedom as I've had in my career so far.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Go for it.
Well, I just asked the question. I was noticing on LinkedIn you were posting a bit about how I think these compressed VC timelines and requirements can sometimes lead to really superficial solutions that come out. And it sounds like you maybe don't have that same environment. Maybe you have more time or more resources to work with and play with to actually develop deeper solutions that are less superficial. Is that the case?
Yeah, like we may not always have the most the more resources thing may not always be true, but time is, and the relationship is different. Like when you build a venture-backed startup, it like what's so hard about it is that venture capitalist, nobody says it this way, but the real is that they become your co-CEO. Like they can come in and restructure your whole business, like, you know, within the next day. So our relationship with TFA is different. TFA is effectively the investor, right? Like part of TFA's budget goes to fund our work. But what's amazing about it is that because of our CEO, and I regardless of how I feel about Teach for America, the way I feel about her is unchanged. Like Elisa Villanueva Beard is, to me, the right person to lead Teach for America through this moment. I am not a Teach for America cheerleader. I am still very critical of Teach for America, but that I am forever grateful to Elisa because she, like, from my vantage point, she gives us the freedom to do things that people don't understand. Like, even when she doesn't quite understand what we're doing, she gives us the freedom and the runway to do that. So I will always be thankful for a person like that who also has been at Teach for America for a very long time, has led Teach for America through some very hard moments, and has every reason to be one of the people that's like frowning at us, but chooses not to. So that relationship, in that respect, like we have the right investor, so to speak. Like we have the investor that gets it. And that I am very thankful for. Like lots of changes happening at TFA right now, like literally as we speak. But in those moments, I feel grateful to her for the protection that she's given us, even to roll this long, right? 3 years is a long time to do work like this, you know? So yeah, but I've been in those venture-backed startups before. It's a beast. It's a different world.
Yeah. What are alternative pathways then that, you know, Edtech founders and startups can pursue or should look at that are alternatives to VC backing?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is like, the first thing every founder should do is they should absolutely drag their feet to raise money. There's this lie that's been sold to a lot of founders that like your company is only means something if you've raised X amount of dollars. And that could not be.
Please go on.
Yeah, it's like I was overcome by this when I started my first startup. It was called Guide, and we felt this pressure to, number one, be everywhere, and number two, raise a lot of money. And then we realized like that's impossible. Like if you're everywhere on social media all the time and you're raising money, you know what you're not doing? You're not building your business. And so this is why the failure rate for startups is so high. Like whenever I see a startup that has a lot of hype, I get really nervous because I know that founder is not building their business. On the other, you know, so what I'll say is like the first thing to do is to drag your feet, like get product market fit, establish like a really strong user base, and like try to build your business, try to bootstrap if you can. I really believe in that. Like one of the greatest, like the founders that I think so highly of Her name is Julia Dexter. She lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She lives in Canada and is the CEO and founder of this company called Shoelace Learning. And I just knowing her over the years, I have watched how not only has she let sales build her business, but when she decided it was time to raise VC, and this is my second piece of advice, she didn't take anybody's money. All money is not good money. She went to those VCs with more requirements than they had for her. So she was like, yeah, I'm doing due diligence on you, just like you're going to do due diligence on me. And she had, I think she turned down something like 30 firms. Like she turned down money. And I think every founder has to be willing to say, I don't want your money at this time, because that money comes with strings. And I know you're desperate. Like I know people want to build their thing that's their baby, but like sometimes taking that money will change your baby. Like it literally. So, and I think the last thing I would say is this doesn't sound great, but everybody can't be Mark Zuckerberg. Like in Edtech, I see this really, and this is why I love Unrulr so much. It's because like when I met Aaron, I was like, oh, he gives a damn. Like business aside, right? Like if Unrulr is like not a startup, he's doing this work anyway. And I don't know a lot of founders like that. Like I don't know a lot of founders that are like, I believe in this thing so much that I will make the way regardless of what happens to this shell that we call a company. And I think if you can find those people to lead your product, to lead your team, then I think you'll be fine. Because there will be, like, maybe it is time to take money. Maybe it's not. But like if you have the right team, then I think you can build something really special. And the right team doesn't mean that you need the person that's the most like Zuckerberg or the most like Elon Musk. Like I spent 4 years being around people like that. Never met Zuckerberg, but spent 4 years being around people like that. The school that we built, they're about to announce in a few days that it's the official school of SpaceX. And I can tell you that those people, I've heard it, billionaires are people, they're not normal people. They're not. Like Elon Musk is different, and he's different in good ways. He's different in bad ways. Like I worked for a guy who's one of Silicon Valley's first like tech giants. And I watched him do things that I was like, normal people don't do that. But this is probably why he's so successful. Like before he would go to a business meeting, he would fast. He would eat nothing for 14 days and would roll in the meeting and be like, I haven't eaten since like February 15th. Like he would say that. And I thought when he said it to me, I was like, that's stupid. But the first time I saw him do it, I saw people like second guess themselves. And I was like, oh, okay. Like this guy's not like the rest of us, right? And so like feel no pressure to be like the whole tech unicorn thing. That's crap. Like build a really successful business that's going to serve people well. Like that is more important.
Amen to everything you said. I mean, I think I'm someone who taught entrepreneurship for a decade, who used this tool Unrulr, who met its founder, Will Rapum, and its co-founder, Fred Delsey, and like you was like, these are people that are trying to take their lived experiences and solve this epic problem of learner-centered documentation and ways for students to feel a sense of belonging in the world and to make evidence of learning just like fucking evidence of learning, right? Something that is undeniable in this space. And so that drew me to use the product, and then it drew me to throw everything aside and join this space. But what I didn't realize was that just like the military, there's this educational industrial complex.
That's right.
Right? That siphons off so much of the money before it actually gets into the backpacks of our learners.
Yeah.
And there are real people, right? Like light attracts light. There are people like you. There are consulting practices that are doing phenomenal work. There are nonprofits on the cutting edge of thinking about learner agency and equity. But there are a lot of organizations and people that are in this space to build their second house, right? Yep. And no shade on a second house, but like there's this fast fashion, right? and there's not a lot of Patagonias in this space.
That's right.
How do you find those people that are doing the real work? How do you celebrate them? How do you amplify them?
Yeah, for me, I think it comes from, like, one of the things I think someone said this to me the other day, like, I'm surprised at how fast I was able to get on a call with you. And by the way, it's not fast. Like, I'm a mess. I don't have like a good management. I'm sure you know this, Aaron. Like, I can't manage my own calendar. I'm terrible at it. Like,
dude, if I get you on a call, it is the most wonderful week of my life.
I'm awful at it. And I'm not like trying to be hard to reach. I'm just bad at calendaring everything. And my Calendly link is always broken. Like, it's never connected right. So, but like, there was one time where I was able to like immediately get on this call, and this person was like, that's like not a normal thing. And I was like, well, my goal is to take every single call that I can, because you never actually know what's happening from LinkedIn or from, right? Like, the only way to sift through the real and the fake is to actually talk to people. And
Totally.
I think you guys will understand what I mean when I say, like, you can feel it even over Zoom. Like, I knew that, like, the first time that, like, we connected in person, I told Sunana on our team, I was like, no, Aaron's dope. Like, we've talked like 3 times on Zoom. Like, I know he's dope. Like, we're having a good time, right? Like, to me, the sooner you can get and talk to somebody and not buy into the hype. I consult with a few startups right now, and one of them, actually I'm about to just like stop consulting so I can spend more time with my kids. But I have consulted with startups in the past where there's a lot of hype around the founder. There's a lot of hype around the start, and then you get under the hood and immediately you're like, oh, you're not who you say you are. And that I can't rock with, like, right? Like, so, or like, it may not even be that. It may not even be, it's also like your product team is not talking to students. Like, I've been speaking to a lot of adaptive learning software companies, Khan Academy, Freckle, all the learning apps in schools. And they very much so see their user as teacher and district official. And that kills me, because I know from years of experience and having students use these platforms, like, kids hate X, Y, or Z about your platform. For example, Khan Academy refuses to talk to kids because they don't want to hear that kids hate Cody from Khan Academy kids. Cody's a koala that, like, if I brought my kids in here right now, they would have 30 minutes on this podcast about why they hate Cody. But like, Khan Academy.
So that's our next podcast episode.
Let's do it. But like, they don't talk to them, So I think as the sooner you can talk to somebody, like, get them live on Zoom or in person, like, conferences are really cool for that. You'll know, right? Like, I think you'll know who's real. The other thing I would also say is, like, I would even say, like, there are indicators of like how the person moves online. Like, what's really fascinating about Unrulr is that you guys have real customers and real pilots, like real people using the app right now. And you guys also don't feel this pressure to embellish about what you're doing. Anybody who's been on Twitter or LinkedIn knows, like, every startup is like taking a picture in front of the office that they're about to go pitch, whether they get the funding or not, and they do it that way because they know they want to build hype, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go pitch Steph Curry. Like, Steph's not interested, but you put that online because you wanted us to believe Steph was going to invest in your company. Like, there are companies that I just know, I'm like, oh, I don't see them doing that. Like, I've never even met the founders of Unrulr. It seems very much so like people who desire for the work to be done, not to be known. Like, one of the greatest people I've ever worked for. I mean, he literally said to me when I was at South by Southwest, he was like, I need somebody to go to the conferences because I have no interest in doing that. Like, I want to go build my thing. That's the people that those are the people that I look for. So,
what questions do you have for us as a company that is a pre-Series A bootstrapped company that's going about not overpromising and really seeking and searching product fit? but we're also grappling with being a product that doesn't have a true competitor, and being a product that is quote unquote innovative, but in reality is just human centered and trying to make these spaces more joyous.
Right. Yeah. I think like one of the questions that I would pose to you guys is, it's actually not even a question. It's just something that actually the same guy that I just mentioned, when I worked with him for 3.5 years, he said this line to me every single day. And he said, "Do simple better," every single day, because I had I just was prone to overthink, and I thought like innovation is about bells and whistles. And one of the things I appreciate about Unrulr is that like it's very clear, like, hey, here's the use for everything that we have on here. And so in that vein, like, I guess the question would be like, what pressures are y'all feeling to like step outside of who you are?
I mean, I think there is this fetishization of quantitative data, and we're a tool that collects something more than qualitative data.
Yeah.
One of the data scientists at the Office of Hawaiian Education said Unrulr collects sensory data, what some would call in higher education warm data or street data. And there is a push when I meet with program leaders, directors of large organizations, thought leaders in the world of competency-based learning, to take the quantitative data that we already have and make it even more quanti. I think that's the non-technical term, right?
Yeah.
To have incredible profiles like you would see on a soccer player or in a video game. And I'm excited to get there, right? I'm excited to take these incredible videos and photos and that are all tagged with the competencies or KPIs of the learning community, and turn them into that. But I don't want people, I want to evangelize for the power of consumable qualitative data. I want people to take time to look through qualitative data. Otherwise, they're just quantifying something that you have to look at, you have to feel, you have to imbibe, right? And so I think I'm grappling kind of with that as well.
Man, I have a call right after this, and I'll text you after it because depending on how it goes, that may be my world for a while. You know, I have this friend named Q, who is a content creator on LinkedIn that desires not to be a content creator, which is he's one of the coolest people. And he started, he got into running social experiments, and he very much so believes a similar thing. And I think if he were talking to you guys, he would push you to just not do the quantitative thing. Like, right. Because I mean, they did this amazing project in Milwaukee where they invited, I think it was 25, it was like 25 strangers. I'll send you the YouTube video. So they invited 25 strangers. When they got there, they just wrote a number on the person's hand, and they were like, just go sit down wherever. And then they had these cameras set up, and you came, you showed your palm to the camera, and it had the number, and that was the order in which you spoke. And it asked, they asked a very simple question, which is just like, what are you struggling through with your mental health? And when you look at, when you watch that artifact, for them, they used to be a company called Urban Misfit Ventures. For them, the quantitative data was like how many people saw the story, which really is not quantitative data that people would accept. But they found themselves being like one of the preferred experiential design firms that the city of Milwaukee used to attract young people to move and stay in Milwaukee. And so I also hope that you guys dig your heels in on the qualitative data. And I love the sensory data. I kind of like the term warm data. I can't figure out how I feel about it, but I do like the term warm data. And like, I have a social science background, like I have a degree in applied sociology. And so like to me, qualitative is enough. Like people speaking is enough. Work, samples, videos, pictures, like that's enough. And the cogs are enough, right? Like the freaking flowers that grow, which is one of the greatest UI secrets ever, is enough. So I would encourage y'all not to. But sales are sales. You got to make sales. So if you need to at some point, But I would love to see you guys figure out how to push qualitative data into the world.
I think one of the other things we're grappling with is our belief that technology does not solve all problems in classrooms. And I think Edtech has been so shady for more than 2 decades and has overpromised and has really, done harm in communities. And we're trying to be the opposite. We're trying to underpromise. And
you know what?
Go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
No.
Oh, I'm jumping in like this because, actually we should have another podcast with my wife.
Done. That's our next one.
Alex is, first of all, she's a wonderful human being, wonderful woman. And because I came from this environment where I was like, we took software and we replaced the teacher with software. Like we replaced direct instruction with that, not the adult. There was a heavier need for the adult in the building. So we homeschool our kids with 4 kids, and I was just like, look, we're just going to do the same model. And she was like, yeah, but I want to sit down with my kid and watch them learn how to read. Like I want to be a part of that story. And for a while I was like, yeah, but that's not innovation. And she was like, yeah, but who cares? Like, how about we do what works? And how about we build a bond and like be proud of the story? And yesterday I got this flood of text messages and she was like, oh, I made it assessment day. And I just timed them reading and counted how many mistakes they made. And I like stepped back and was like, how beautiful is that in its simplicity of like there's no, like, I have fallen into this trap of thinking like technology will save our schools. And actually any technology that doesn't make more room for human moments, like I don't want it anymore. Like
Preach.
That's, I think Unrulr is like the quintessential, like Unrulr is capturing human moments. It's just, tech is just a vehicle, right? And if we convince ourselves that it's the whole shebang, then we've lost. So I'm your amen corner for that. I deeply believe in that.
I mean, you mentioned this make simple better, make simple easy. Like my first interaction with Will Rappoon, one of our founders, was about Unrulr as a tool that reduces friction in documentation. And Unrulr is a tool that allows you to wireframe innovation in your school through evidence, right? And for me, it has become a cultural tool with the organizations and schools we work with, right? Because you have to decolonize how they think about evidence, which is all about only getting perfect work out, right, on a graded system, right? Yeah. And you have to lean startup that shit, right? And get them to capture evidence that isn't perfect, that actually shows, right, their process and who they are and their humanity and what they're learning, and have others see it, right? And so for me, what I grapple with is when there isn't a culture of reflection in classrooms, when there isn't the belief in process in classrooms, Unrulr is not a Band-Aid for that, right? Unrulr is not the tool that magically makes that happen, right? Because what's being documented is that same perfectionistic bullshit or the same picture of a computer screen or an Asana board. And so what I'm grappling with is how it becomes a tool that chips away at that, right? And how that can happen quicker. That's what I'm trying to think about in the learning communities that we dive into.
I love it. I love the thought process.
So we're coming up on our hour. This was an amazing conversation. Thank you. What tips do you have for schools, for teachers, for parents around shifting your child, your teenager, this adult you're working with from passive to active?
I think the tip that I would give to parents is to know that the choice you make for school this year does not have to be the choice you make for school next year. or even next semester. Like, give yourself the flexibility to change and to really listen to your kid and evaluate and do what you think is best. And I think I have been hesitant to write about this online, but one of the pieces of advice I would give to teachers is to find shortcuts. Let technology do what it does best and take some of the parts of your job off your plate that you hate. Don't hang on to them because you feel like that's teaching. Allow technology to do that. Don't fight it, and see what happens if you just get to spend more time with students. If you just get to there's a tool called Brisk that is coming out. Brisk is another one of those tools that I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It's just ChatGPT API plugged into Google Classroom, where you can say, hey, write me a lesson plan for tomorrow. I'm going to be absent. And it will, in your subject, like, use the information in your side of your Google Classroom to write you a lesson plan for your sub. Like, use that so you can go be a human, so you can come back the next day. And like, I know it's hard. Like, I have been in that classroom before. I get it. So I would say, like, find the tools, a suite of tools. I just decided like 30 seconds ago that I'm going to do a series of videos on tools that you should use to make your life easier as a teacher. Like, find those tools so that you have the time and energy and space to be more available for the kids in your classroom. Because what they're going to remember is not your pedagogical excellence. They're not going to remember they may remember your philosophy on education, but they're going to remember the moments that they spent with you. They're going to remember the ways that you fought for them. They're going to remember the ways that you inspired them. Like, I don't remember one single lecture from any of my academic career except for one in my freshman level of history, because the professor had this giant bamboo stick instead of a pointer. I don't remember what it was about, but I remember thinking, that's dope that he did that. And he's a college professor. So I would just encourage teachers to use what's around them and get the support they need so they can show up better.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was good to see you too, man. I am excited to listen to this and other episodes you guys have.
Have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll text you sometime next week. Thanks for your time, man.